The following is a chat with Elijah, a mental health Discord server owner who's interested in spreading the awareness of mental health. Now, I wanted to make a little preface stating he didn't want to show his face due to privacy reasons, which I fully respect. So, throughout the podcast, you'll see a little blur, and I hope you guys understand. With that stated, I hope you guys enjoy the chat. Boom, and we're live. Welcome, Sten. I appreciate you making time. It's been probably we've been trying to schedule this for around 2 weeks now.
Yeah, something like it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So I appreciate
Thanks
you
for
coming along. Can you talk to me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Stin. My real name is Elias, but most people know me by Stin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what details you want me to include, but
Just tell me
yeah,
like what you do, what your interests are. I think
yeah.
that'll be good.
So
Mm-hmm.
I guess that yes, I run a Discord server pretty much, and that's sort of my interests, I guess, running the Discord server.
What Discord server do you run?
Yeah, so it's called the Therapy Center. It's a mental health server and a mental health community. It has become quite big recently, and we're basically focused on providing quality like help for pretty much anyone, but usually it's the younger audience that seeks our support.
Younger audience. So what would be the age demographic for the therapy?
Well, so I mean, Discord's audience in general is the younger audience. It's usually between, I would say, like all the ages between 13 to 20. There are also a lot of people above that age, but that's the general audience. And so for my server, that's also the most, like the age gap pretty much. I think most are 15 to 17, around there.
I see.
So that's like the yeah.
And I believe
average.
you're around 15 or 17 as well. Is that correct?
My age?
Yeah.
No, I'm 18.
18. And what made you want to run this therapy center?
Well, so this is actually quite interesting, because I think what's unique about the story is that I wasn't actually the one who started it.
Right.
I'm more the guy that made it the therapy center, or I'm just gonna say the shortened version, TTC. But I'm not the guy who started it.
What does TTC mean?
TTC, shortening for the therapy center.
Oh, okay. That's what we'll refer to from now on. TTC.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, TTC.
What does it? Wait, what does it represent? It's Team Therapy Center. What's the
TTC, the therapy.
The therapy center. Got it.
So TTC, I wasn't the one who started it. I'm more the guy that made it the TTC and made it big and sort of built it up. It was started by a guy called Bappo. He goes by username, but his real name is Lucas Bryant. He's from the USA. He started the server at a very young age. He had some issues he dealt with himself, so he created the server so that he could help others, I guess, as a way to cope. And
do you mind?
So
do you know what type of problems that he was going through?
I'm not sure specifically what problems. I think it could have been, that general feeling you can sometimes have when you just feel like you don't feel well and that things are not going well in your life. I think it could have been something like that.
Something like every other day.
Yeah. Oh no, you're good, man.
Yeah, I'm definitely good. Yeah, I see. So there was like this feeling of unease, and that was the main motive of starting some type of community where they could kind of cope. It's like a coping mechanism. I like that idea.
Yeah, pretty much. And so he made the server, and I think he had some of his friends join in, and it was like a small group. And so he made a video about it on YouTube. It's still up. And he basically said, feel free to join. And most people came from that source. That was like the main source of members. I joined exactly 4 months later. So the server was created early January 2020, and I joined in April.
Oh, so
Early April.
this was after during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, which could speak for the reason I joined. I felt rather lonely
Yeah.
in school, and I figured I would seek help online to disclose my poor mental state to my parents. I didn't really want them to know. It's easier if they don't know, right?
What?
Because
Why?
well, I think it was because I didn't want them to treat me differently. I've always been sort of the kid that, I mean, I sort of didn't want them to worry about me.
Right. It's
It's
kind of like a
easier.
burden.
Yeah, kind of. And so you don't want them to see you as the sort of struggling, right? And so I decided to join the server, and Lucas, the owner, and the guy who started, he did help me, and it was, well, basic general advice. But I think what was really sort of valuable for me was that he took his time to help me,
The effort
and that, yeah, that was sort of when I realized how valuable it was for someone
to be heard.
But also how valuable it is for someone to be given someone else's time. You know, there's this quote, "Time is money,"
Right.
and I just realized how valuable it was to give someone your time. And that was actually something that I'll probably talk a little bit later on, but that was actually what started one of the main ideas behind the TTC. But yeah, I started actually feeling better then the next couple of months, and eventually I graduated high school, pretty much.
What made you have these episodes of like loneliness within high school?
Well, so the loneliness was actually in 9th grade.
In ninth grade, so middle school.
But I entered high school later on, after joining the server.
Wait, is ninth grade middle school or high school?
So I think,
I
I'm
think it
from
is.
Sweden, so
Yeah.
I think it's no, I think
It is high
middle
school,
school is
right?
actually 9th grade.
Oh, okay. So middle school over
Yeah.
here in America is eighth grade, so it's a little bit different.
Wait, repeat.
Yeah, ninth grade. Starting ninth grade is high school. Eighth grade is in middle school.
8th grade is in middle school.
Yeah, at least in U.S.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think in Sweden
it's a little bit different.
it's so in Sweden, I think 9th grade is middle school, and high school is 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade.
Gotcha. I see. Yeah, high school's 4 years over here, up until the 12th grade. So it's a little bit different.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
But let's.
Yeah, so in 9th grade, your question was?
Yeah, what made you feel this like loneliness? Was it from the transition from middle school to high school? No, you were still in middle school, right? Yeah, I'm getting it mixed
middle
up.
school.
Yeah, middle. You were
Should
still
we
in
say
middle
it in
school.
grades instead?
Yeah, ninth grade.
Yeah, I think.
Or maybe age would be better. What age is ninth grade? Is it 14, 15?
It's 15.
15.
Yeah,
Okay.
15.
15.
Well, 9th grade in March, I turned 16.
Okay.
So 15, I guess, would
Okay,
be
15.
like the average age.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. So what made me feel lonely? I think in general, I think I've always, I mean, ever since childhood, I've had this special sort of relationship. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but relationship with being lonely, because it's something that actually has been something that have followed me during my entire childhood, and it's not something that have been, well, it hasn't bothered me except for I mean, I think loneliness stems from having the wrong companionship, right? And so usually I never really felt lonely unless for a particular reason. Like, for example, in kindergarten, very far from, but I had this great friend my first ever friend. But he moved to another school later on,
Mm.
and I sort of didn't have really anyone to hang out with. I
Yeah.
had my best friend, but we didn't always hang out. But we actually hanged out pretty frequently. Even my best friend moved schools um, later on, and so I didn't really have anyone to be with. I was sort of the sort of um, short kid. I was considered the nerd,
Mm-hmm.
and it was something I took with pride. Actually, I actually liked being called a nerd because uh,
It
I knew
indicated your
that.
intelligence.
Yeah, well, I think it was something that I don't know. I could typewriter. I could write faster
Mm.
than them on the computer.
Mm.
Usually, I could solve computer issues
Right.
that they had.
Mm.
Um, so I think I was mostly very lonely, but I didn't. It didn't bother me, like I said, unless for a particular reason.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think. Um,
So to kind of walk me through. So in kindergarten, you're telling me there was a friend of yours, but then he kind of
mm,
left, and there was some type of void, right? But you still had friends. You were telling me that you had a best friend.
yeah, I had friends. I think I had friends, but I didn't have many best friends.
Mm.
There are friends that you just have, and then you have best friends
How
that
would you
you hang out with.
define a friend, and how would you define a best friend?
I think I would define a friend as someone that you sort of have. Oh, this is hard. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can describe it in like a metaphor or something. I mean, I think a best friend is someone that I think friends generally is people you can relate to and someone you have found common grounds with. While a best friend is someone you've found common grounds with, but you've sort of I don't know that it's hard to explain, but I think somehow you've just um a best friend is someone you are much closer to, someone you've maybe been through more with, someone you have spent more time with. You
Mm.
have built this connection to them, while as regular friends are someone you find common grounds with, and people that you work well with, but maybe not people that you uh, spend that much time with.
So the
And
time component is a big differentiator between what makes a friend versus best friend.
I would say so. Maybe not necessarily. It doesn't have to actually be a factor.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Well, I think it's a factor for to build best friends, but I don't
Mm.
think it's a factor to maintain them, because I'm not sure if you had any of these moments, but when you have best friends, but you may not hang out that much with them because of school or
Right. Right.
whatever the case may be, but then you meet them and you have the best time in your life with them.
Mm.
So I think the time factor isn't as relevant, I think, later on when you've sort of built up the connection with them. Uh, I would also say that a best friend is someone you've fought with. You
Mm.
know,
So it requires some struggle, some ups
it,
and downs, some roller
well,
coaster.
yeah. Oh, well, I don't think it requires a fight, but
Right. Right.
usually I've noticed that the people you are best friends with, you have very often not been um, like on common grounds with at certain
Yeah, I
points.
think there's
Like,
something to that. I think that it's like it's struggling together. It makes the bond
mm,
somehow stronger. It's
yeah,
knowing that you've gone through it, and despite it, we're still together. We might not have same opinions, but despite that, I
mm,
still appreciate and love
mm,
your partner for who they are, like because of
right,
the values or
and
some other
rebuilding
attributes.
that friendship again,
Mm.
I think, is also part of it. So you
Yeah.
sort of fight with them about something, and you almost don't really like each other, but you do somehow, and then
Yeah.
you rebuild that connection,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes even stronger.
Mm.
Because I mean, my best friend now, I've known him ever since childhood, and I mean, we've fought a few times, but usually it's when you're younger, and I can't
Mm.
even remember the last. the last time I fought with him. That must have been years ago.
Mm.
But
So your
yeah, I
best
think
friend also carries a certain memory, like the identity of who you are a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, we me and my best friend, we have known each other for quite long, and we know what we were like when we were much younger. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. So we have these old memories, and I think that could also be a factor to what makes a best friend is
Yeah.
that you have a lot of memories together. You know each other more deeply because
Yeah.
you've seen so much from them, and you've seen how they have uh, sort of developed
Mm.
in life.
Mm.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think so. It's a great way of describing a friend.
Yeah.
And let's take me to ninth grade. We didn't really get to uncover what happened in ninth grade that made you feel lonely.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've generally throughout childhood felt a sense of
Right.
loneliness,
Right.
but it might not have always been a struggle.
Mm.
But in ninth grade, it was a struggle because I sort of tried hanging out with particular friends. I think it also has something to do with that. Well, I had a really good friend in eighth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and we were sort of hanging out quite often.
Mm-hmm.
But in ninth grade, he sort of ignored me
Mm.
quite a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and
Why do you think that was? Do you think?
I honestly think that he sort of decided that he chose to hang out with people that I think he did struggle himself a little bit. I'm not mad at him by any means, but I think he did struggle with finding. I think he wanted to be one of those guys who were sort of like, I guess, respected by the cooler guys, right?
Mm.
And so he decided that maybe I wasn't enough for him. I can't say if that was entirely the truth, but
Mm.
it's what I got from the situation. And yeah, so he ignored me, and that was definitely something that made me feel
Yeah.
lonelier. But I tried to hang out with other people in my class,
Mm.
and I could sort of do that, but very often I didn't really feel like I could socialize with them, or
Resonate
it
with them.
never, yeah, it never
Mm.
clicked really.
Mm.
That you can have conversations with people that you really click with, and it creates a fulfilling um, sense.
Experience. Mm-hmm.
But and then there are people that you really don't click with,
Mm.
and it just becomes this more interview kind of
Yeah, I get that. I
conversation,
get what you
and
mean.
it's tense. It doesn't
Right.
flow the same way.
Right.
And
So.
that's really how I felt.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I've had those moments too, especially in middle school and high school. It really did feel like I was putting on this mask of like who I, you know, who I needed to be in order to fit in with a tribe. Looking back
Right.
now, it's like
Definitely.
it's definitely like a popularity contest
Yeah.
of like
How do you
unique.
think
Hmm.
you got over that?
Um, I'm not sure entirely. I still think there are parts of me that the inclination of the desire to be accepted, to be part of the tribe, is still very, very strong. The
Yeah,
tribe mentality,
definitely.
to belong, to have some type of cause or
Right.
something to be unique in a certain way. The
Yeah.
us versus
Yeah,
them
well
group
said.
idea, it's super strong. So I think
Mm,
it's just part of who we are as creatures, as social creatures.
definitely. Yeah.
So I don't think there's, I guess how I coped with it was through addiction. I talked about this before, which is
Mm,
like I had a really bad social media addiction and video game addiction like growing up,
mm,
as well as porn addiction, which I'm like the most insecure about. I would say one of the,
mhm.
but I would find these like escapes of like, okay,
Right.
I'm not really socially fit. What else can I do with my time? And so like after I was kind of like the class clown, trying to be as funny, and then
Mm,
come home, you know, no contacts, but I would just be scrolling through feeds of what other people were doing, and on an endless loop of
mm,
consumption, and then video games until my mind was numb, and then just repeat that cycle. But I didn't know I
right.
was addicted. I it's only in hindsight that you could recognize like, oh wow, I did have these flaws I didn't even know about.
I see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
do
yeah.
you think that could have that kind of path could have an impact on what you do today? I mean, you do a lot of study sessions and uh, have been focusing quite a lot on your education, as I see. Do you think
Mhm.
your past could have been a contributing factor to how it came
Yeah,
that way?
I was too tired, and I really was afraid of myself, of who I was becoming.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. You sort of um, go down this rabbit hole, and then you reach sort of the end at the tunnel where you see just how dark
Deep.
it is, and
Yeah.
you're so tired of it that you just decide that you're gonna climb up again.
Yeah,
And
there's like a certain quote, I can't recall it, but it's like,
mm,
especially in darkness, like the light becomes brighter and brighter. I forgot who stated that, but
yeah,
I think especially when you're in the rabbit hole, and
definitely.
you feel a little pang of shame or guilt, you should be really
Mm,
thankful that that exists, because that
yeah.
propels you, that negative emotion that could propel you to change. And
I think that's sort of how
mhm.
improvement works, right? That we sort of we start at a certain level, right? And so we go up a little bit and then we fall down, but we don't
Mm,
fall down as nearly as we were before.
for
So we sort
sure.
of grow a little bit and we continue that way.
Yeah.
It's it's a sort of a consolidating um, formation of how we do in life.
Yeah, of that development cycle. I think it is
Mm,
something like that. Exactly. It's not like a linear path where it's just straightly going up, because I still
mm,
have problems with consumption. I'm still very hedonistic in my pleasures, where I can't really stop myself, especially with
right.
just media and food especially. But yeah, I think it's like, I forgot who said this. Maybe it's some monk named like Jay Shetty. He stated, like, if you do something like extreme, let's say for example you're not doing anything, you have like 10 hours on your screen time and you need to
Mm,
change it, then you could do maybe cutting out, zero, not using your phone, going on a fast for, let's say, like 7 days, and then you know what the extreme is, so the next time you go, maybe you'll find a balance. Maybe it's like 5 hours instead of 10. Hopefully it's not
right.
10 or 5. Hopefully it's a lot lower, but you know what I'm saying, like it's like you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to do something extreme, and then you could find a kind of like a balancing point, but it's like an up and down, but hopefully towards a place where you'd like to become.
Yeah, and I think that sort of helps you adapt in life to
Mm,
how your life turns out to be, and you sort of adapt to that and sort of create a lifestyle that works for you. And
mm-hmm.
I think that always evolves uh, in
Yeah,
how you grow and how you adapt your lifestyle
yeah.
to your circumstances.
Evolve or die. That's a very common one, that I
Mm,
kind of attribute to, I guess, like self development. Really, like if you don't
mm,
maintain it, it's not because, like, just because you have achieved X, it doesn't mean that it's going to maintain. I don't think there is an
mm,
end. That's what's super scary about, I guess, like bettering yourself, or in this pursuit of becoming the best version. A lot of people
yeah,
may be scared, or for me, I get a little scared that there is no end to, there is no golden era. Like there is no,
yeah.
the ending credits and gold sunshine.
Exactly. It's like we chase this idea of how we want to be, and if
Hmm.
we ever reach it,
Hmm.
then we that often we
We're gonna
we
derive pleasure or eternal happiness, but I don't think that's
yeah
the case.
yeah, because we chase this idea of where we want to be, and
Hmm.
if we reach that, we always want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
We never want to be where we are now,
Hmm.
in a sense. Like if you when we are younger, we usually want to be older.
Hmm.
But when we're older, we usually want to stay young again because we realize that it
It's a
was better
paradox,
back
huh?
then. It could
Yeah.
also be a sense of nostalgia there, I think, as well. That,
Yeah. It's a weird dilemma.
mm, really is.
I think it's strictly related with like scarcity, and also what makes humans so unique.
Mm,
So
definitely.
let me point this out. So, Mr. Dostoevsky stated that in a utopian world, everything, your basic needs are met, and everything is
Mm,
granted to you, and you give this in the form of a, let's say, some type of cake on a silver
mm,
platter. You give it to the
mm,
humans, and then the humans will not take it, but they will, uh, take it apart just to see what happens. There,
mm,
even if that, I guess, happiness is granted to you, people will not take it. at least
Mm,
that was my, and then my interpretation of that was like, yeah, I don't think happiness is like something that you attain. It's something to, I guess, to maintain. It requires some type of, I don't know, it requires effort. It requires a lot of effort.
definitely. And it's not something consistent, I think. It's something that, yeah, that is one part that I've not really sort of figured out, because I
Mm,
think happiness is a very broad term for a collection of underlying feelings that build up for us to feel happy. Because the same way letters form words, the same way different feelings form an overall feeling of being happy or feeling tired or feeling sad or feeling angry. So I think it's in order to define it and see really how to attain it, I think we have to sort of look at what makes us feel happy,
yeah.
and we
I
have to
want
look at
I want to
the underlying
sorry,
emotions.
sorry. I want to discuss like
Sorry.
what attains, what makes you personally happy, but I also wanted to describe this idea of like scarcity. The law of
Mm,
scarcity states like whatever you don't have, there's a certain tendency that you want to have. Think about all of the, like especially materialistic tendencies of kind of like the modern world. A lot of the cool houses, exotic cars, or even certain people, certain clothes, whatever that may be, it's like
mm,
it's because you have these tendencies to pursue that because you don't have it. At least for me, it's like, especially maybe it's certain prestige as well, certain status.
mm,
We all seek for it because we don't have it now. Um,
right.
and I think that propels us. Like if balanced correctly, then that desire could allow you to be in a better state. But if left to uncontrolled and letting other influences kind of dictate over what is success and what you need to have,
Mm,
that making that feeling of fear of missing out, that makes you feel that you need to attain this but you don't have, then it kind of propagates the idea of like, man,
right.
unhappiness, that unease.
Definitely.
Yeah. But also wanted to ask you, what makes you personally happy? And how do you view happiness? This is something that I've been wondering about. Is happiness just merely chemicals within our mind, or is it just subjective experiences? What is it? What really is this?
Well, it's at the base and physically, it's chemicals in our mind
Mm,
that sort of makes us feel happy,
mm,
but those are impacted by what we experience and what we do, and definitely our lifestyle as well. And I would say that I view it, it's something that I have not really. I mean, I don't have I haven't figured it out. Sort of. I think that for me, happiness is sort of the this sense of fulfillment
mm,
and satisfaction with something, about a particular um, subject or about something. So usually, what makes me happy is
mm,
having had a fulfilled day. I haven't really felt this consistent feeling of happiness. It's not periodic.
mm.
It doesn't go in different. Um, it's not like this month I felt really happy. It's
Right.
more
It's random.
this day
Mm-hmm.
was a happy day.
Mm,
It's each individual day and the things you experience on that day that makes me feel feel happy. And I think what makes me happy is a sense of progress,
mm,
progression, satisfaction, and fulfillment. And I think that stems from, I think that's very individual. But for me, what makes me feel fulfilled or satisfied is having made progress at something. It could
yeah.
be that I've finished a project
Yeah.
or something. It could be that I've had a really good time with friends. It could be that I've maybe resolved something. Like, let's say I've maybe, I don't know, there has been something I worry about,
Mm,
and I resolve it.
yeah.
That usually makes me feel better, and
Yeah.
so
And this
the
traces,
fulfillment.
yeah, this traces also back to, I think, chemicals, because when you set a certain objective, and
Mm.
you actually feel yourself going towards that. There's dopaminergic systems where we're producing
Exactly.
chemicals, right? And whenever there's an obstacle that kind of
Mm.
prevents us from achieving that progress, and we're kind of in a zone of like distress, let's say, of uncertainty. That's why we don't like uncertainty. We love planning things out. We love getting
Right.
closer and closer to it. And I
Yeah,
think,
and that's something I noticed. There was this guy who said that he asked, "Why do you think humans became the most dominant species?"
mm-hmm,
And I said, "I don't know." And well, he told me that well, it was our ability to
mm,
plan for the next day, the next
the
week, the
discovery
next
of the
month.
future. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because we as humans have such an incredible ability to plan things, to think about the future and sort of plan for how that will turn out and predict. And I think that definitely is a showing sign in 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 us as humans, as a species.
Mm. Yeah, that rationality aspect of it, if
Definitely.
utilized, it's truly like a superpower because you could really
Mm,
negotiate with the current present in order to manipulate the future into how you ever you want it to be, right? Even like
mm,
the whole idea of investing is you put something into right now, you put something, you sacrifice now for a better future. That's the whole idea, and that
right.
utilizes the concept of unlocking the future, which is, you know, pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think so too. It's such a cool feature about us humans, and it happens every day.
mm,
I think we regularly plan for things, and it's very subconscious. Everything is so subconscious. Often we don't think about how much that is actually going on in our minds.
true.
Mm,
But there's also I've lived kind of like a very cynical life, I would say, of not, you know, just pursuing the now instead of the future. I there was moments,
mm,
I'm not sure about yourself, but for me, I didn't care. I literally lived every day in order to pursue my own pleasures, not
mm.
taking account of the future. I think it's like it's something related with the amount of responsibility you want to face and need to face.
Mm.
But I didn't really have that connection, or yeah, until
Yeah, that's something interesting because usually it's the way we plan and the way we sort of very often things don't turn out as we plan them to,
mm-hmm,
and they don't turn out the way we predicted something to be like. And that usually is a pretty interesting thing to explore and see how we sort of adapt to that. Because
mm,
we are very often planned for something that never happens the way we planned it.
mm,
And so we sort of have to adapt to that, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and we probably also feel negative emotions like that. For at least for me, when I expect something, a return, but then I don't achieve it, that's when I feel negative emotions. But then based upon that, you also adapt your strategy to, you know, get to that goal, that plan.
Yeah, and our strategic ability,
Yeah.
our ability to plan and sort of, it evolves, I think, and it makes us better at that, and also our action taking
Mm-hmm.
improves, I'd say, in terms of choices.
Mm-hmm. And talking about kind of like the ability to plan, how do you think one should kind of plan or design? How should one live their life? Would you say?
Um, I think, well, it really, I think planning really stems from what people, where people want to go.
Mm.
So we never plan for something if we don't have an intention to get somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
to to get somewhere, to progress.
Right.
And so if people have somewhere they want to go, uh, if it's in even in the physical world or
Mm.
in our or in an success view,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think people should very often make a plan and a backup plan, but they should never expect it
Mm.
to go that way. I there is this quote that says that you should never have any expectations. Never have any expectations, because if it doesn't go as planned, then you won't get surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of you sort of have more control, I guess, if things don't go the way you wanted it to, you still sort of weren't surprised, and so you can sort of more easily adapt.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
also feel like that quote is kind of more of like a coping mechanism of when you didn't achieve. I feel like you should still set like that expectation, because then you kind
mm,
of set yourself for failure. You see, like if you set a
yeah,
goal and then
it's
you make that into a certain thing that you need to achieve, it's
mm,
then you will do all of your put all of your efforts in order to attain that. But let's say at the moment that you fail, then how do you deal with that unease of like, oh man, I was putting all my effort, but yet I still couldn't achieve this, how
mm,
hopeless I am. And then you start to kind of unwind of like all of your inabilities and your flaws, your insecurities. It just
yeah,
unravels.
definitely.
And that's where the quote comes in. It's like, you know what, don't, you shouldn't have you should have expected this,
Yeah,
don't. And then that's like a
very
coping
often we think
mechanism.
about that quote when it
Yeah.
doesn't go as expected,
Yeah.
because I think that's very hard to
It is.
not have an expectation.
It
Like
is.
subconsciously, I think we do.
Yeah.
Always we have expectations,
Yeah.
but it's a matter of whether we keep in mind to maybe. I think we have expectations, but but it's whether we choose to focus on it or not.
Mm.
And so, but that's really really interesting to just. I mean, it's interesting to have expectations
Mm-hmm.
because whether it goes your way or not, it has such different outcomes.
It does. It does. I think it's super important that one sets
Yeah.
themselves. Like this is something I realized the past year, which is I set really arbitrary goals like that. I need to read more. Let's say I need to
Mm,
meditate more. I need to do be more healthy, exercise. I need to study more
mm,
effectively. But these are such arbitrary goals that I
mm,
set for myself, and then like I was like, okay, these are way too arbitrary. I need a more specified goal. And like now
mm,
I'm trying to design my life in a way where I set myself a certain goal. I mean, this is in itself, all goals are quite arbitrary, I would say.
yeah.
But still, I gave myself like a number. Like, okay, I'm going to be spending 30 minutes on this date, because then like it's more tangible, it's more physical, let's say. So
Mm.
I think
Yeah,
it's a
and
great way. Mm-hmm.
that could grow into very very different outcomes, and I think that could we can sort of look at that in our own experience,
Mm-hmm.
like how it turned out for me that I would feel lonely, or
Mm,
how it turned out for you that you would be addicted,
mm,
and sort of how that has led us in the path of development, because it was how things turned out for us. Like I didn't expect that I would be ignored,
mm,
and that gave the outcome of me feeling lonely.
mm,
And so I planned for that, and I joined the therapy server, of which I
mm.
now own.
Right,
And I didn't expect to
right,
own it, but
right,
it turned
right.
out that way.
Exactly.
And through there, I developed. So it's a really
Yeah.
interesting thing to see
Yeah.
of how that leads us in life. Like
Yeah.
because for 2 3 years ago, I didn't expect to now own a server uh, on Discord that had succeeded
Mm-hmm.
pretty majorly.
Yeah, for sure. It's only in hindsight that you recognize, like, wow, maybe this challenge was really amazing because it granted me XYZ
Mm,
opportunities. And
yeah, definitely, and that's really interesting because it's I sort of sometimes reflect on sort of how the server came to be the way it is now. When I
mm,
look at what I did to to make it better, to make it grow,
mm,
when I look at how how it's sort of how the group of once a few a few people, of a few teenagers, now became this massive server. And I've noticed that it's in overall it's just a bunch of unexpected events
mm,
that accelerated the server, but that could have been those unexpected events could have been the result of something else.
mm-hmm,
So because to give an example, like let's say, like for example, I did a lot of quality work in the server,
mm,
and the result of that could have been the unexpected outcome of me partnering with the Psych2Go organization, for
mm-hmm,
example.
mm-hmm.
So I think in that sense, it could it's just a lot of unexpected events.
Mm.
I think.
And would you state that those unexpected occurrences have kind of changed your perspective on, let's say, I mean, I'm relating it back to your server about mental health?
Yeah, definitely. It depends on if you mean like a specific part of mental health
Yeah,
or.
like because you're involved with, looking at different people with different challenges with what they're going
Mm,
through, hearing all about, their struggles and,
mm.
giving advices. What would you say, like, has that kind of allowed you to better understand yourself, let's say?
I'd say the progression of
Mm-hmm.
me building a server
Yeah.
have taught me a lot about myself, because
Mm.
building a server isn't just the actual server building. It's a lot about a lot about uh, being persistent, being resilient, uh, being meticulous. It's I think it's the server building itself has been a progression for my mental health,
Mm.
and even the struggles of owning a larger server. Um, so I think it has sort of made me. It has allowed me to explore a lot about myself,
Mm.
definitely.
That's good. Like the search for.
And
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
yeah, and I think that's something that I'm quite grateful for, actually, because I'd say that probably I wouldn't have maybe developed as much if I didn't own the
Mm.
server. So now when I look back, I'm actually really grateful for um, struggling in my earlier days, like in 8th grade and 9th grade, and well, eventually um, I struggled, but I got over it, and then I became the owner in
Mm.
quite an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely has helped me progress more by owning the server, probably. Uh, mm,
That's great. And would you state that you still struggle with loneliness?
mm, yeah,
It's.
that
Do
that
you
can
think it
still
will
happen.
ever? Do you think you will ever be in a state? There is no way of conquering it completely. It's an emotion, and you can't
Yeah,
control it.
no, definitely not.
Mm.
It's an emotion, but I think it's whether we appreciate being lonely or not, because sometimes
Mm.
it can actually feel very very freeing to be lonely. I would say being alone can often be a blessing rather than a burden.
Mm.
And if loneliness is a problem, then it very often stems from the people that you surround yourself with.
How come? Can you extrapolate?
Well, we don't often feel lonely if it's not a result of trying to socialize. It's I mean, very often when we've felt lonely, it's it's us. If lonely is a struggle, then that's a feeling of abandonment, of
Mm. I
of
see. The fear of
feeling.
missing out.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of how it was for me in 9th grade,
Mm.
because mm, as a result of my friend ignoring me,
Mm-hmm.
I tried to socialize with other people, other classmates,
Mm-hmm.
but because I couldn't socialize, I felt lonely, because it was a feeling of being abandoned,
Mm.
uh, and feeling like I couldn't really be a part of something,
Mm.
and that sense, it became a burden. But to compare that, there have been times where I've really enjoyed being alone, because usually I've it has felt a lot more freeing to be lonely. Like let's say you're in a very tense social situation,
Mm.
and you want to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then being lonely can actually feel quite freeing. I'm
Mm.
not sure if you've ever, I mean, I'm sure you've been in a situation where you have felt like, oh man, I gotta get out of here. I don't want to be here right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Every
so
social
then
situation.
being lonely
Mm-hmm.
can feel very freeing. It can feel good to be lonely.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that this idea to try to not be lonely. I think there is no way to conquer loneliness. It's more a sense of how we deal with it, I think.
And do you think there's any correlation with that feeling of abandonment and maybe anxiety? I'm trying to draw some correlations, like anxiety. Where does anxiety really root from?
Well, so anxiety is, I would say, stress that you can't do anything about.
Stress.
It's it. I mean, if we feel anxious about a test,
Yeah.
usually it's because we might not feel so prepared for the test.
Mm-hmm.
So when we try to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we have a test the next day, and we know that we haven't prepared for it,
Mm-hmm.
we know that we feel stressed and we
Mm.
can't do that much about it.
Mm.
I mean, we can study, but we should have studied earlier, right?
Mm.
And that's a sense of anxiety because it's stress that we can't do that much about.
I
Or
see.
even we can feel anxious about socializing
Mm.
because people who has social anxiety feels like it's very hard for them to socialize and they don't know how.
Mm.
So whenever they are in a social situation,
Mm.
they feel stressed because they don't know how to socialize, so they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
They can try, but that's where the scary part comes in with people that has social anxiety.
Yeah.
So to answer your question about if there is correlation between loneliness and anxiety, you said, yeah, you asked if there were
Yeah.
correlation between anxiety and loneliness. And I think definitely there can be some correlation. Depends on the case. If you
Right.
mean
Yeah, because
in what setting?
anxiety, it seems like it could be applied in so many different ways. Like
Yeah.
the two examples that you gave was like the anticipation of the consequence. Like if you
Mm,
anticipate some type of failure or negative feeling of, like, let's say
yeah.
you're going to be failing an exam, what does that entail? Maybe that entails you're a bad student. What does that entail? Maybe, not being accepted by some type of validation from your parents, or
Mm,
not getting a career that you desired. And if and the on the other case of social anxiety, it could also be similar to that. It's like not being accepted, not being part of the tribe,
mm,
like these uneasiness, let's say. it
yeah.
um it could really paralyze you.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if right before you're gonna, let's say, have the test, you feel this very immense, maybe sometimes stomach pain because you're so anxious for something
Mm.
that you don't really know what to do. And then when you do the test, all your anxiety stops because when you sit there and you're actually gonna do what you when you're actually gonna do what you were anxious to do, all your anxiety goes away and you're
Mm-hmm.
so focused on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's actually quite an amazing feeling,
Yeah.
even if it's scary at the time
Mm-hmm.
to maybe take the test that you
Yeah.
weren't prepared for. It's
It's,
such a relief to do the
for
test
sure, it's related with a
because
lot of overthinking.
yeah, lots of overthinking. If you're
Yeah.
anxious,
Yeah.
overthinking can be a big problem,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
It can eat your life.
And I think that could have some correlation to social anxiety too, that you sort of overthink the situation.
Yeah.
Like this idea of what if?
Yeah.
What if I say this? What if I say this? What if I'm awkward?
Yeah. there's a
It's all different
there,
feelings, right?
there's a perfect phrase to encapsulate this, which is like
Mm,
paralysis by analysis. So
mm,
you're paralyzing yourself because you're analyzing of so many different outcomes of the what ifs, as you stated. Like, oh, what if this happened? What if this happened? What if I stub my toe and then, like, everyone's gonna mock me? What if I, ask this
right.
person and then everyone's gonna make a clown out of me? What if I spoke my
AKA,
mind?
you're trying to plan for it.
Yeah, yeah.
You're trying to plan and you don't know the
The outcome.
expected outcome.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it
And
is.
so yeah, and see where we found some correlation there between planning and outcome.
For
And
sure.
so
Man,
yeah,
it's
it's
so
really interesting.
yeah, it is. It is. What do you think like are the coping mechanisms though, like of that humans and we use to kind of understand or how to deal with anxiety or loneliness?
Well, I think we as humans
Mm-hmm.
we cope in many different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very individualistic.
Mm.
I think maybe I cope with it sometimes by, let's say, watching YouTube.
Mm.
Someone else could cope with it by going to the gym.
Yeah.
There are so many different ways to cope with it. What I mean, how would you say you coped with dealing with your
I think,
being addicted?
well, I would say it's not completely done because I'm still coping with it. I would state that
Hmm.
I coped with a lot of maybe anxiety or loneliness that I felt with video game, but that was just
Hmm.
it was hiding. It was putting a band-aid over a bigger problem because I've created this massive problem that I wasn't even aware of until in hindsight. But I would say
Addiction is coping in a
yeah,
sense, actually.
it is. That's why I said it's a coping. It
Hmm.
was a good coping mechanism. It was a
Hmm.
way for me to escape reality into, uh, a space where I felt comfortable or at ease. You know,
Right.
because I also
So
like. Hmm? Go ahead.
some coping mechanisms can turn out to be leading to something worse.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Depends on the mechanisms, right? Like if you stated that a good coping mechanism after you got rejected was going to the gym, that's by it's more power to you. That's associated with good, and society kind of values those things of being healthy,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
But
definitely.
if you're coping with maybe doing drugs or um, alcohol, whatever that is
Mm.
associated maybe with self destruction, then that is associated with not so good, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I would say, going back to your question, I would associate ways of coping with video games, but then still I'm still figuring out, I guess, of like how to manage it. But it's something like deciding to
Mm.
plan out maybe the responsibility and being afraid of the outcomes. But I mean,
Mm.
I'm still in the midst of figuring out the best way of it. It's a trial and error for
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Well, I think we're coping with a lot of different stuff. It's
Yep.
we deal with struggles daily.
Yeah, for sure.
So we never really leave this idea of coping
Hmm.
or being addicted to something. We I think lots of the problems we had in the past we still have, but
Hmm.
maybe we have developed and learned so much more from it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's easier now to deal with.
Especially from elders and their wisdom. Like, oh my goodness, I would
Yeah,
listening and
yeah,
holding the respect aspect is so important in my life personally, because then I'm able to emotionally like derive their lessons like much more because they've gone through it and they're teaching you the
yeah,
know-hows. I also wanted to ask,
definitely.
you just mentioned about the daily struggles. What are some daily challenges that you kind of face in your like life?
Oh, that's a good one actually. It's from yeah. I mean, I'd say the struggles. I mean, we usually don't face the same struggles every
Right.
day.
Mm-hmm.
We there are different struggles every day that I struggle with, and it's day to day. It's
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, for a few days ago, I was anxious for a test
Mm-hmm.
before Christmas. Uh, there was someone I was anxious to meet, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Um, um, today I've been a little nervous for this podcast, for example. So there are
Yeah.
the the struggles are never the same.
Yeah.
It's
It
from day to
varies.
day, but I would say that in general, if we think like what do I struggle with generally
Mm-hmm.
on certain days, I would say there it could be keeping up
Mm.
with responsibilities,
Yeah.
especially as the server. That's also a struggle that I face on many days where I feel like I need to prioritize the server, but something gets in the way of an unexpected event, or I gotta do something in the server, or I gotta progress, or code. I do a lot of coding now because as the server have adapted, I have sort of found more use of coding to code and develop features for TTC. And so that's something. So it's, I would say the most common is keeping up with everything and just, yeah, keeping up.
Yeah. I mean, you probably did not expect the amount of responsibility that you had to adopt when you first began, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it was from a beginning not a lot of responsibility.
Mm.
It was, well, when I became owner, which is quite interesting. It was, I mean, I got to take over a small group of a few teenagers.
Yeah.
I was part of that group. I had been a part of that group for several months. I stayed in the group because I was grateful for the previous owner's help, Lucas's help that I was given.
Mm-hmm.
So I was grateful, and then all suddenly I became the owner, and and I was sort of so surprised, but they decided to make something out of it. It was my intention to. I remember I said to myself, okay, well, it's a cool thing, but I guess I'll just get 100 members and stay there and help those people as a family.
Mm-hmm.
But well, it didn't turn out that way. So in the beginning, it was not a lot of um of responsibility, but as the server kept growing and growing
Where is
and
it at
growing,
now?
in members,
Yeah, or like the students that you're helping out. The members.
you mean as in
Yeah, you said that you kind of started with like 100, right? But then.
that was my idea to start
Oh,
by
right.
getting to 100
Oh,
members
I see, I see, I
and
see.
help those people. So it was never my intention to keep on going
Oh, gotcha.
after I reached 100 members.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Because what I started with was the group of, well, I think we were just a few
Yeah,
teenagers.
yeah.
So we were 7 members, 8 members,
Mm-hmm.
around there, 7, 10 members, I think. And so it wasn't much responsibility. But as the server grew and developed, it was more and more responsibility. And now that responsibility has increased.
Yeah.
Now that we're a major hub for mental health on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of
For
responsibility.
sure.
But even when I started out, I it was not as much responsibility as it is now, but there was some responsibility. Not as much, but I could feel the responsibility. And yeah, like I said, that just kept increasing ever since.
Yeah, but that's incredible how you're adapting to kind of manage and spreading the access to resources of providing people who need to be, just listened to and providing them
Yeah.
access and
And
to get the tools that they need.
yeah, and that's been very interesting to see how I've adapted to the server's circumstances and how things turned out for the server
Yeah.
and what I had to do, because I think that's sort of that the way I've adapted to that is pretty much how the server got built.
Yeah.
It's many steps,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to describe
For sure.
how to build a Discord server, but
Yeah, I bet.
it's the fun part, I would say.
Yeah.
Building the server was the fun part. It was actually never achieving anything. It wasn't it
It
wasn't
was a journey.
it wasn't affiliating with Psych2Go that was the fun part. It wasn't becoming Discord partner.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about reaching 5,000 members.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing of that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, those were short moments of happiness,
Mm-hmm.
but the real happiness were the journey
Mm.
when you were focused.
Yeah. And for
Mm.
I guess for the listeners to know about this wonderful project that you're continuously building and working on, where could they find this community? How could they find you?
Sorry, repeat it like.
Yeah, how could they find the server that you're building?
They could find the server. I mean, there is we have a URL link that it's discord.gg/mental.
/mental.
yeah, so that's they just put the link in there and they'll get in. But if they have Discord, they
Gotcha.
might have to download Discord if they don't have Discord.
Mhm.
But if they have Discord, they can just put that link into any browser and they'll get sent there
All right.
immediately. I guess that's the easiest way. There are different ways through different websites
Yeah.
where they list servers. Could mostly find us there too.
I'll make sure to put this in the description for those who are interested. But
I
Elijah,
appreciate that, man.
yeah, no worries, Elijah. I wanted to say thank you so much for making the time to do this podcast. I think it's a perfect way to end this off. Yeah.
No worries.
Do you have any last words? Anything you want to share?
Oh, yes. Okay, some last words.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say that to those who are listening is that they should persist through whatever challenges they're going through and appreciate the struggles. Learn to appreciate the struggle because that's where you'll learn. That's what you learn from, and that's what you'll grow from. That's the journey to persist through the struggles. That's, I would say, when you learn to appreciate the struggles, that's when you're gonna be grateful for a lot of what you have.
Yeah, I can't put it better myself. Such words of wisdom coming from Elijah. All right.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, thank you so much once again. And let's.
No worries.
Yeah.
This was really fun. Thanks.
No better way than ending off there. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.